Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here with us tonight for this very, very interesting discussion. My name is Ahlam Buluki. I'm the CEO of the Literature Foundation and director of this festival. And it gives me great, great pleasure to moderate this conversation with Dr. Rachna Buxani today around a topic that is very necessary, a book that is extremely eye-opening, and I think everyone can benefit greatly from and learn from. To introduce Dr. Rachna at the start of our session, she is a licensed mental health counselor and national certified counselor for over 23 years, experienced across the US, Dubai, and the Cayman Islands. Known for her compassionate, culturally sensitive approach, she specializes in trauma, family dysfunction, and identity development, my favorite topics. She is the founder of Buxani Counseling Care in Miami, a mental health advocate, and a board member of NAMI Miami-Dade. Her work extends to prisons, schools, underserved communities, reflecting her deep commitment to accessible, inclusive care. And this is her second book. Please join me with a round of applause for Dr. Rachna Buxani.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Dr. Rachna. And let's start with our discussion with an important question around, you have 23 years of experience in this field. And of all the personality disorders you could have written about, you've chosen narcissism. Why is that?
It's a public health issue. We have, according to the experts, we have 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 people who are diagnosed, not diagnosed, who experts feel have narcissistic traits. And those 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 people go to affect so many others in their life. And then, generations are having traumatic effects. And so I think it's very important to talk about especially narcissism, because we see it so much around us. And it's affecting so many people so deeply.
And in the book, you focus on one particular patient. And in her case, she's talking, you focus on the guardian, the narcissist being the father. Why was it important in this book for you to focus on the narcissistic personality as a father figure or a guardian figure?
So it happened to be that in her case, it was her father. And then while I was writing, I started writing the book, I realized that there isn't a book on the dynamic of a father and a daughter in the context of narcissism. So it became even more meaningful for me to write something like that. So this is the first of its kind. There are books out there that have been written, with romantic relationships. But I think the relationship that a father and a daughter share is so profound. And it doesn't matter. In this case, it's complicated because we have the narcissism, that's added to it. But even otherwise, that daughter-father relationship is so, so profound in a girl's life. And then when it's complicated with that, it goes, there's generational trauma that happens because she then carries it and exhibits all those characteristics with her kids, her spouse, and then those kids grow up to then again, so it just keeps going on. So I think it was very important to touch upon the parent, because that's where it starts.
And you were telling me before this session that actually, often it's not the narcissist that comes to see you, it's the victim of narcissism, and you've seen quite a lot. And when you see victims of narcissism, what are some common signs that help you identify this?
That they are victims? Mm-hmm. So I think their stories, like in this case, it took me a while to even understand, because as therapists, we are very symptom focused. So if somebody comes in saying, oh, I have anxiety, I have depression, okay, let's deal with that, right? We don't go into, okay, but why? She had everything okay in her life. She's married to a great person, she has great kids, she successful in her career, but still felt so empty, still felt so disconnected. Almost like her life was passing her by. She wasn't living it. So initially, as a therapist, you go into, okay, let me try to make it better for her where she is at right now. Only later realizing that, no, there's something very deep that needs to be healed for her to enjoy her present. So I think more of us, so now with that experience, now I dig in. As soon as the client comes in, when they're ready, I will dig in to understand their past. But, there's no telltale signs unless you really go in, because it's very difficult for people to talk about these things. Even for her, it was difficult. Because even accepting or acknowledging that, oh, wow, like my family or my dad was not who I thought he was, or that relationship was not, it's a very challenging thing. So they don't come in with that. They come in with the superficial stuff that's happening. But we as therapists need to sift to see what's happening within and, deeper.
And so the book is structured in a great way, and it actually breaks things down in details. But just for the sake of this conversation, tell us a little bit about narcissism, at the core of it. I know there are different types of narcissism, but just tell us a little bit about what makes a person narcissistic. What does it root from?
Okay. So narcissism is on a continuum. NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, that comes according to the DSM. The characteristics of a person who has NPD. But remember, those are the ones who are diagnosed, but they don't come in, so we don't diagnose a lot, right? So, but the ones who have been diagnosed, so it's the grandiosity, the sense of entitlement, the lack of empathy, the arrogance. So those are characteristics according to the DSM. Mm-hmm. Now, given that I've said narcissism is on the continuum, we see people who are not diagnosed with NPD, probably because they don't come in, or because they don't necessarily have the very grandiose or the entitled traits, but they are somewhere on the continuum. So we see people who have narcissistic traits. On one end of the continuum, it's those emotionally immature, the selfish, self-absorbed people. It's an annoying thing, they're nuisances, but they're not harmful. On the other end is the malignant narcissist. Those people are dangerous because they, domestic violence, coercive control, extreme sense of entitlement, extreme sense of that I'm, like, everybody's there only to serve me. So, so that's the continuum of narcissism that we see in people.
Interesting. And I think such was the case of the father of this patient. And what was interesting to me is that there are 3 siblings, and each one has a role to play. So there's the golden child, there is the child that takes the blame for everything, and then there's the child that sort of
invisible
is in between.
Yes.
and invisible and fills in the gaps.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about those dynamics and how that comes to be.
So in narcissistic families, there's generally roles either are assigned or children adopt those roles as a survival mechanism. So the golden child is, the one who's put on a pedestal. You don't want to, even though it seems like that's a great place to be, you really don't want to be the golden child, because that comes with its own level of insecurity, because you're on a pedestal, but you can be thrown off at any point. So, but the golden child is where the narcissistic parent identifies, almost it's like, I see that mirror image of me, so you're the one who I'm going to favor. Okay, but that comes with, like I said, expectations, because all the children are there only to serve the narcissistic parent. The invisible child is the child who's like, I don't know why you're here. You don't matter. You don't matter until you're a nuisance to me. So if the invisible child is sick, oh, now you're bothering me. So that's not okay. But otherwise, you don't exist, whether you're there, not there, it doesn't really matter. The scapegoat is the person who kind of, that's something that the narcissistic parent is ashamed of within themselves. The whole idea of narcissism stems from a deep level of insecurity and shame that the narcissist feels. Now, say we have a parent who is, say a mom who's narcissistic, and she has a masculine side to her, like we all do, right? So we have, but she despises that, or she's ashamed of that. Now, if she has a child, maybe a male child, but who's masculine, she's going to probably pick that child to be the scapegoat, because there's qualities about the child that she does not like in herself. So she projects it on that child. So that's how the scapegoat is picked. That, okay, you know what, I'm too ashamed of this within myself, and so now you're displaying that characteristic, so you are the scapegoat. So that child grows up getting blamed for everything that happens. Then we have other roles too. We have the peacemaker, somebody who's like, a child who kind of adopts the role of, okay, I'm just going to maintain peace. Because it's so chaotic, these family systems are so chaotic that I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep peace. There is a truth seer / truth teller, because somebody might be a truth seer, but they won't get to the point where they can tell, because telling takes courage. But the truth seer is a child who's seeing everything and thinking, okay, this is messed up. There's something going on here, and mom's like, this is not okay. This dynamic is not okay, where we are sitting as children in servitude of, our parent. So those are the truth seers. And then sometimes they tell the truth, but then they might still get shunned by the rest of the family. And then you have the personal assistant who's kind of running around doing errands, thinking that, okay, fine, you know what, if I just do everything, if I keep the house clean, if everything is okay, then it won't be that the parent will come and, there'll be a showdown. Yeah, so these roles, like I said, they are adopted either by the child, being a survival mechanism, or they have been placed by the parent.
I'm interested in, in cultures like Arab culture or Indian culture, where, respect of parents is a core value, or elders, and not questioning your elders, and, parents is, it shouldn't even be a thought, sort of, How does awareness start in this sort of environment, and what does it take to create a conversation in this space?
Something like what we're doing right now. I think we need to have more dialogues. Respect and healing can coexist. So I don't have to disrespect my parent, sibling, whoever if I want to continue having that relationship, I can continue having that relationship, and I can still work towards my healing, and those two things can coexist. But it's very important, Elam, to understand the roots of why I do what I do. I always tell my client, because people will come and ask me, and those are, so I have some clients who will come first session and say, so how long is this going to take? So And in America, mental health is covered with insurance. So I don't even know why they're worried. You have a person who's sitting there week after week just listening to you for free. But, they want to speed up the process, right? And I always tell them, therapy is a journey into yourself. Enjoy it. Because you're here because something that you are doing or something it's not working the way you want to. That's why you're here. Let's get to the bottom of what it is that's not working. So I think it needs to start with the curiosity of, why do I do this? We all have triggers, right? There is a very famous German physician who I'm a big fan of, Dr. Gabor Mate, and he always says, you know what, there is no one who does not have trauma. And especially what we call the small t traumas. We've been bullied, we've been, harassed by people, we've maybe had a mugging, but everybody's been through some sort of trauma. And that trauma leaves a lasting impact. Because of that, because trauma is saved in my body, I react, right? I get triggered, I react. I think it needs to start with that curiosity as to, why am I doing this? What's happening? And once we have that curiosity, then we go into finding out, okay, this is what is going on. Does that mean that, I have to leave my parents' home and just never have a relationship with them? Well, it could, if you want to. But in a lot of cases, that's not what happens. And the goal in therapy is never that, for me. If they want to do it, that's the goal. But I don't tell people that, okay, the goal is that you need to run from this relationship because they're crazy. So you just need to. That's never how it goes. There's a way of being in that relationship, but still from self, right? So having that self, and which is why the cover of this book, the little orb that the girl is carrying, that self, that signifies self. And it's about finding that self and operating from self in spite of having these relationships in your life.
That's really interesting. You said early on in this conversation that the narcissist doesn't come to therapists. Are there cases where they do come to therapy?
Yes.
And what does it take to get them there?
So one is couples counseling. That's fun. So it's because, okay, say if the husband is narcissistic, the wife's given an ultimatum and says, let's go to therapy otherwise or else, right? So then they'll come, and they really come to say, fix her, because she's the problem. So those are fun sessions. The other times that we see narcissists coming in could be because they've got other, like comorbid sort of things, addictions, or mostly, or ADHD sometimes, because we'll see people with ADHD, and there's a correlation with ADHD and narcissism, and we can talk about that. But sometimes it's something else that's going on that brings them in. And the third time we see them, and this is, mind you, very few, right? So out of the very few that we see coming in, but the third is that something big has happened in their life, like in a negative way. So they've had bankruptcy, or they've just, someone's left them in a relationship. So they've really got to hit rock bottom to want to come.
And in those cases, in your 23 years, have you ever seen a
No.
narcissist
No.
come to realization?
Sadly. I wish I could tell you something different, but no. And I'm going to tell you a very interesting, because I had one. The only time in all these years I've actually terminated a client has been a narcissistic client. And she got to a point of being unbearable. I pride myself on, like, I can go into the session and it doesn't matter. Whatever you say, you can hurl out those abuses and they're just going to, what? With her, I got to a point where I just couldn't. So I had to send her an email, terminating her, giving her referrals for somebody else. And I was like, good luck to that person. I am done. I've done everything that I could. But they are extremely antagonistic client. So she would actually sit there and tell me everything wrong that has happened in her life since she started therapy. Still, she would show up every week. But I would be lying if I told you that in all that time that I saw her, that I saw her being able to self-reflect or take accountability, right? Because those are the things that need to happen for a person to, for a narcissist. It's that, hey, I'm sorry. Taking that ownership, taking accountability for your part in whatever has happened. They find it extreme, like, that's not going to happen because that brings a lot of shame. And given, so it's, I'm not going to take accountability because then I'm going to feel ashamed. If I experience shame, I'm going to get angry, right? So that's that shame rage cycle that keeps happening with the narcissist. So they never get to that point where it's okay for me to take that accountability in a relationship and say that, yeah, you know what, I messed up, or I should have done something differently. So we can't even get to that first step with them.
Right. But it's so complicated when the narcissistic personality in somebody's life is someone that you love, because it's, for sure, if it's 1 in 5, I mean, then we all love narcissists in our lives.
We all know someone.
You know, and but you can't just because someone has a difficult personality, you're not going to stop loving them. So how do you tackle this? Do you set is it boundaries? What is it that you're looking for in someone that you love but is harmful to you? And how do you heal with somebody who you have contact with on a daily basis?
So I think the first thing, and 50% of therapy is psychoeducation, right? So understanding this and eventually getting to the point of labeling that this person is narcissistic. Because we don't start there. Nobody wants to hear that when they come in. So really 50% of my work is slowly that push and pull and getting them to a point where they understand that this is what is going on. After that comes the piece of radical acceptance. Like accepting that this person is who they are and this situation is not going to change. So you can choose how you want to navigate that relationship, how much of that relationship you want to have in your life, knowing that it's not going to change. The person is not going to behave differently, no matter how much you love them, right? Because you can come from a place of compassion, you can come from a place of care, you can come from a place of love. It doesn't dent the narcissist. They are going to be who they are. So radical acceptance is a big part of it. And what I have seen in my work with, because we end up working more with the victims, right, of the abuse, not the narcissists. What I have seen is, and I have clients who are in romantic relationships, so, wives, sometimes parents of a narcissistic child. I have a mom who has a narcissistic son. Once we are able to get to that point of that radical acceptance, then it's about setting those boundaries, the boundaries within. That, okay, no, I'm not okay with this. I cannot allow this. So they manage and navigate their relationships, knowing all of this, having that acceptance, while they are also working on healing from everything that they've been through up until this point. I want to say though, because it's very confusing, because there's some people who say, okay, but like one of my clients, she walked in, she has a daughter, so she can't leave the relationship. Very, very abusive husband, bordering more on the malignant narcissist. So, and she came to me one day and she said, Rachna, but I understand, I know, I have that radical acceptance, but it still hurts. And I looked at her and I said, yes, but it still hurts, you're human. The idea of radical acceptance is not that it's not going to hurt, you're just going to heal faster. You're going to know, because you're going to be able to walk back and say, you know what, but this is not a me thing. So you're going to be able to separate yourself. Again, till I go completely no contact, I don't think there's a way that it's not going to hurt. So it's harder to heal when you're still in contact with the person and you have that relationship. If you lose the person, whether divorce, death, it is easier to heal. But that doesn't mean that it is not possible to heal, even if I have that person in my life. It's just you've got to know yourself. As long as I operate from self, I get myself to that point where I can operate from me, I'm going to have the courage, I'm going to have the confidence, I'm going to have the clarity to be able to heal.
Is the narcissist capable of love?
Short answer, no. Because love, let's think about what love requires, right? Love requires sacrifice. Love requires understanding. Love requires accountability. Love requires, placing the others, caring for a person. The only person the narcissist cares for is for themselves. So they are not there, no. I wish I could say it. I could lace it with something, but I really can't. They are not capable of loving. And can I tell you something? The biggest misconception is the narcissist loves themselves. The narcissist is not even capable of loving themselves. They actually hate themselves. They despise themselves. And the hatred that they have for themselves is what they project onto others. So if you're not capable of loving yourself, it's not happening with somebody else. Right. Everybody in the narcissist's life is serving a purpose for them. Yeah. The day they stop serving a purpose, you don't exist.
One type of narcissist actually really caught my eye in the book, which is the vulnerable narcissist.
And yes, let's talk about that.
This is someone that I did not see coming. Entitlement, envy, a deep fear of abandonment. But I mean, they're kind of like a quiet person. They're not this. They're deeply introspective. So tell us a little bit about this type of narcissist.
So they're not introspective.
Oh, sorry. No,
but they are quiet. They are the quiet types, and often we
they come across as introspective.
They do. Yes, but no narcissist has any level of introspection. Yes, I wish they did, but they don't. But and I'm so glad you brought it up, because I think it's very important to understand what this covert or vulnerable narcissist is. Because when we think of a narcissist, and because the DSM, it's a very small definition for a very big problem, right? So, and the DSM does not actually talk about the different kinds of narcissists. It just talks about one, the grandiose. Mm-hmm. So everybody thinks, but a narcissist needs to be that grandiose, needs to have that, that arrogance, needs to look as if they don't have, they're very self-confident and stuff. So when they come across, or when we talk about the vulnerable narcissist, they don't understand that. But a vulnerable narcissist is probably more dangerous because it's not on your face narcissism. So a vulnerable narcissist or a covert narcissist is almost like a hidden narcissist. So they still have the same sense of entitlement. They are the wannabe special people, right? So I want to be special so bad, but there isn't anything special about me. So again, very insecure, come across as a little more socially anxious, because they are a little more paranoid. The grandiose narcissist is almost more self-assured. The vulnerable one is more very worried about their true self being seen. Oh my gosh, are people talking about me? But they want to, again, they still have that sense of entitlement. So they will still go around using people, being that selfish, lacking the empathy, having the sense of entitlement. It's just that they are not on your face grandiose. And that's why it becomes it's confusing anyways when you're with a narcissist, because every client of mine patient of mine who's ever come in a narcissistic relationship has always gaslit themselves to think, is it though? Are they narcissists? Are they not? Because there is a good and a bad, that's what causes the trauma bonding. And we'll talk about trauma bonding because I think people need to understand that. But it's very, very confusing. So the vulnerable has a different layer of confusion because they're not on your face, they're not always this charismatic, arrogant people, but they're still very selfish, and it's woe is me. The world is against me. I would have become so good. I am so good with what I do. If only the world knew. I got a chance. So it's always blaming somebody else. That victim, the whole victim mentality is what the vulnerable. We all know somebody like that, don't we, Ella?
I know I'm questioning everybody in my life now. Including myself, actually.
You're like, oh, no, okay, so I've had that too. And here's the thing. Do you know how you know that you're not? Because you're questioning yourself. And I tell my clients that all the time. If you are questioning that you're a narcissist, you're not. Because the narcissist is never going to question that they are one.
Okay.
Yeah. They believe they're not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, victims of narcissism, one of the key things that they face is that they were never allowed space. So, they cry and the parent rolls their eye at them, or, they've sort of never been allowed to have that space. And even their pain, they don't just, allow themselves to feel the pain, but they feel guilty about having pain at all. So tell us a little bit about those complicated emotions that we carry with us into adulthood if we face that.
Yeah. The child is not, the eye rolling is because the child has now become a nuisance and the parent has to do something for the child. Then that's not what the narcissist wants, right? So what the narcissist wants is that you serve me. If you're going to create a nuisance for me where now I have to do something for you, they just don't care about doing that. So that's why the eye rolling. They've not been allowed to, experience that pain, and they have that guilt. Yes, a lot of times that comes from, when you have been gaslit for so long, you start gaslighting yourself. You don't, and therein is the reason why people need to come for therapy, right? Because you get to a point where you're doing to yourself what your parent did to you. So now the parent did whatever they did, but now I'm not allowing myself to be me. I'm not allowing myself to experience what I want, what I feel. So that's where that guilt comes from, because I have been trained as a child of a narcissist, has been trained that I am only in servitude of my parent. I don't have the right to feel, to ask. That's just not, that's not my role. So when I do feel, then there's a guilt that comes with that. And I'm sure everybody knows what gaslight is. Yeah, everybody knows because it comes from the movie, right? Okay, so
Great.
then we don't need to get into that.
My next question was, let's talk about trauma bonding and the science behind that.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. I think, understanding why people stay in those relationships. So when you see the relationship with the narcissist, there's good and there's bad. So a person who's trauma bonded is going through that cycle of the good and bad. And they're addicted almost to that cycle that's playing out, right? So when it's bad, I'm working towards getting it back to that good place. So the whole life of the victim, is spent trying to, can I get this person back? Can I get, maybe if I clean the house, I do the groceries, I do whatever I have to, and then he'll be okay. The parent or the husband or the wife, right? The narcissist. Okay, maybe that's how they love me. That's how they'll. So that the good and bad and the addiction to that cycle is what trauma bonding is. And that's what keeps people stuck. But again, this is a very subconscious thing. It's not like I'm going in and saying, oh, I want to be treated like that. But once that happens, it's almost like that you get sucked in, and then now you're doing whatever you can to get it back to the good place.
And what does healing from this look like?
From trauma bonding?
From a narcissistic relationship?
So a lot of steps. We've talked about a few of them. We've talked about the psychoeducation part. We've talked about, the radical acceptance part of it. You need to work on grief, right? Like for her, she had to work on a childhood that she never had. So it's the loss of a childhood, the loss of that relationship, because you can't look at that relationship in the way you would after knowing what you know, right? So it's grieving, and it's very gut-wrenching, because, and especially when you're grieving the loss of someone who's still alive, right? So you grieve that loss of a relationship when the parent is still around, or the sibling is still around, or I mean, if it's a divorce, then that's slightly different. But you're grieving, so that grief process is there. And ultimately, the goal of healing, and remember, healing is a journey. It's never in the past tense. You never are healed. You're always healing. So, but the goal of healing is to slowly move towards that individuation, that moving to self, where I have those 8 C's, as Dr. Richard Schwartz, which I had the privilege to interview for the book. But, he talks about the 8 C's of self, which, the courage, clarity, calm, confidence. I need to function from there, and I can, because we all are born with a self. But our experiences make it so that we stop functioning from self and we start functioning from our protective parts. So the goal of healing is to get back to that place where I'm functioning from self. So that's what healing looks like.
And I think at the start of chapter 10, you talk about how the goal of it is also not to be able to handle trauma, anxiety, pain, and all of these things, but to allow joy in.
Absolutely. I think we need to look at, our past, what we've been through, what happens, as a source of healing to, become that best version of myself. So it's really not something that I need to be ashamed of, or look down upon, or try to run away from, or not talk about it, because that's what makes us who we are today. So why would I want to get away from that, or erase that? But I can draw strength from that to become the person that I want to be.
Great. I want to allow time for audience questions, because I think this is an important topic. And yes, we've got somebody down here in the middle, and then we'll come back to the front. So one over there, and then one in the front, please.
Thank you. Thank you for your insights on this important topic, and for noting that it's often the victims who seek help first, possibly in this room as well. So I have 2 questions. First is the engagement. How can we realistically get a high conflict and radical narcissist, as you had pointed out, to see a qualified specialist or enter counseling, especially when they deny any problem?
You can't. You really cannot. However, if this narcissist happens to be a spouse, you may be able to say, okay, this is it. If you don't get into therapy, I'm going to divorce you. But it's extremely, and even then it's extremely difficult, because when they come in as a therapist, again, their goal is going to be to fix their partner, not see anything wrong with them. And that's why therapy with a narcissist is extremely, extremely difficult for a therapist, because they don't come in because they don't think there's anything wrong with them. So I wish I had a better, more promising answer for you. But that's why my training is to deal with the victims of the narcissistic abuse.
Now, the second is not sure if you can respond to that as well. What are the key steps to protect children and oneself from a radical, potentially violent narcissist, practically, legally, and through safety planning?
Thank you.
No?
Wow. And that's a tough one. When you're saying that the person is in the narcissistic relationship and now there are kids involved and there's domestic violence.
Yeah.
If there is a way that the partner can leave, safe way that the partner can leave, then that would be the best way out of that relationship. But I'm going to also tell you this. And we have protective measures in the States. I'm not sure about laws over here, but we have protective measures in the States. In fact, things like coercive control has now been recognized by many states as actually being, existing, and we offer help. Like the legal system offers help for that. However, having said that, I have had clients who've left those relationships. You have to really, really be strong, because when you share custody of a child with that narcissist, when you're co-parenting with that narcissist, it is extremely challenging. You have to be extremely smart, strong, and you have to have a very good support system. So you have to seek help for yourself, and you have to have a strong support system to be able to walk out with your children, if you possibly can, because that's the best case scenario, but knowing that that narcissist is always going to is going to try every possible thing to make it extremely difficult. From, hurling out abuses on the phone. I have had clients sit in my office and I can hear the spouse on the phone yelling and screaming at them. So it is not an easy, there's no easy way of doing this. But I think what is important is to make sure that you have a very strong support system and make sure that you have a therapist you're working with, but a therapist qualified in working with victims of narcissistic abuse, because it's a very niche field. Not all therapists understand it. Not all therapists know it. So they really need to know what they're doing.
Thank you. And just to give a brief context, I'm a legal professional and I will discuss with this something in private.
Great, thank you for your question. Can we have a microphone down the front? Just to say that in the UAE as well, there is a Women and Children's Foundation with a hotline in a situation like that, which families can call for support. I believe it's called the Women and Children's Protection Foundation. You can find it online. It definitely exists. Thank you.
That's great.
Hi. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for bringing in a dynamic that I haven't seen before in narcissistic relationship books. Cause
You have not? Congratulations.
I have not seen a family dynamic. It's usually
family. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, but I was going to say great, good for you, because it's very. There's so many of them. So if you've been able to that's
I
fantastic.
have a lot of experience with narcissism.
Okay, there you go.
No,
I was like, oh my gosh, how?
No, but I was
In the family, yes.
I've been thinking the conversation needs to be started with family dynamics before it starts with, oh, my boyfriend or my husband, or because that's the root of it, right?
Absolutely.
And I wrote a question for you. Well, maybe 3 questions.
Sure.
How can you tell the difference between narcissistic abuse from like a parent or family dynamic. And those who just have extremely inflexible beliefs that need to control people around them for those beliefs to stay in place, like family image, reputation. And can those family dynamics that hold rigid traditional values be something that narcissists can use to promote their own narcissism? And how does the survivor of narcissistic abuse be able to tell the difference between, oh, is this narcissistic abuse or is this really what they're, because it gets confusing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you something. Why would a person want to control another person? Even if it is on cultural norms or, right? So a narcissist is a person who tries to control another person based on whatever is important to them. There is such a thing as a self-righteous narcissist who believes that, okay, the way I am seeing things is the right way of seeing it, and you need to see it the way I see it. And I talk about the different kinds of narcissists. So, yes, a person who is trying to exert control on another person, that's not normal. So when there is an abnormality, you have to question, because it most likely is coming from a personality, right? That's what the person, so, and it's coming from a disordered personality, because we all have personality, right? But we don't go around wanting to control somebody else in terms of how they're thinking or how they're behaving or how they're conducting their lives. When you start doing that, you have to ask, because that's not how normal people behave. So when you see that, and forget about the label. Let's even, because like I said, there is such a thing as a self-righteous narcissist, but let's even forget about the label. The fact that this person is trying to do that is not okay. Right? So, because you can have that belief, the minute you try now to say that, okay, but that's the right way, that's the only way, now you need to start looking at it this way, and you need to start behaving based on this, there's a problem there.
That point, in certain cultures, like Arab culture, for example, the patriarch has a role to play and often, has the main say in how things go. And, it's a sort of, I don't know if it comes from a tribal system or it's, but that does exist. And it's just we take it as a way of life.
Yeah.
Do you mean that in all cases, that is a form of narcissism?
So here's the thing. If you are okay with it as a child, okay, and if you're okay with following, the norms, okay. The problem happens when, say there's one child who says, okay, but I want to do something differently, and then it's like, no, it has to be my way, and that's when we would question that. Because remember, I mean, I can have, I'm a parent myself, and there's certain rules that I have in my household. But if my child comes and tells me something that they want to do differently, I am not going to put that barrier and say, no, this is how it's going to be. It's my house. These are the rules and you have to follow it. Because there has to be that level of empathy in any relationship. So, and you can parent from a place of empathy. If you're parenting from a place of empathy, then it's not narcissistic. But if it's devoid of empathy, where you're only, okay, this is how it's going to be, irrespective of how you feel about it, then we must question.
Thank you. And a question over there?
Thank you so much for this session. It's really educational, I would say. And I have a question about what would you say about the people or the victims of narcissists in a household where they might reach adulthood and they might refuse help or therapy because in some way it might emphasize the fact that their parents are guilty. So they don't want to see their parents as guilty people and they have caused harm to themselves. So they don't want therapy because, you know, I don't want to say that my parents are faulty. So, and
And most people don't.
yes.
When people come into therapy, they don't want to talk about the parts that have actually led them to come into therapy. They really want to focus, and that is it's in all cultures. I live in Miami, Florida. It's a very Hispanic dominated community, and even amongst Hispanics, it's the same thing. They don't come in because I want to tell you how bad my parents have been. A lot of times when they come in, they don't even know, because they come in because, I have symptoms of depression, or I've been feeling anxious, and then we dig in. But a seasoned therapist, because again, I never tell people that go into therapy and start talking about your parents and what a poor job that they've done, right? So I think encouraging people to get therapy to understand why something in their life is not working right now, that's the way to get them to go talk to a therapist. However, a seasoned therapist will ultimately get to that point when they are ready. Because it's a push and pull with clients. So it's, it may not be the first session, it may not be the 5th session, it may not be the 15th session. But at some point, when the patient is ready, we get into it with them.
Yes, but could it reach a point where these victims become the narcissist later
Absolutely.
on? Because
Absolutely.
once they don't want to admit,
Absolutely.
they want to deny and keep denying it until they
But that's
become-
how it's perpetuated.
Yes,
You see, because, we talked about the children's roles.
yes.
So, when we talk about, say, the golden child, can the golden child become the narcissist? Absolutely, right? So, or even the invisible child or the scapegoat, any one of them can become narcissistic because narcissism is a defense mechanism. So remember, it comes from a deep level of insecurity. So these children of narcissistic parents also have deep levels of insecurity. Now, does that mean that each child will become? No. But yes, some children of narcissistic parents will end up being narcissistic themselves. Absolutely. So they can. And then it becomes more difficult to get them to go and seek help.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have a question in the center here, Namika.
Firstly, thank you for such an illuminating session. I think this is a conversation that we need to keep having
For
from time to-
years.
For years, yes.
We also, we are still scratching the surface of this very, very confusing personality disorder. All personality disorders are challenging. This particular one has everybody,
My question comes from the fact that for a lot of women, now the conversation is about have more self-empathy, have more self-love. And at which point does that self-love become narcissism? Is there a danger of it falling into the trappings of narcissism? I know that you defined narcissism as something that comes from immense self-hate. But when we talk about self-love constantly, do you think there is a danger of that crossing over to narcissism?
no, self-love is taking care of yourself. Selfish is only taking care of yourself, right? So that's where the danger is, when nobody else matters but me. So, but me loving myself is important. Me knowing that there is a self, showing compassion to myself, that's what healing is about. But when I start confusing self-love with being selfish, that becomes a challenge. The other thing that I think it gets confused with is self-confidence. Oh, but how do you know if a person is narcissistic or self-confident? And in a very basic term, self-confidence is saying, I'm good. Narcissist says, I'm better than you. You see, so there's an arrogance of, oh, I'm better than this person. So I'm looking down upon that person. So those are the differences. But I absolutely think we all should have that compassion for self. Did that explain it?
Thank you. Do we have time for more questions? Yeah. Any other questions? There's a question in the back and then one in the front here.
Thank you so much for this insightful conversation. It was very interesting listening to you both. I have a question, and I know you have answered part of it, like, is narcissism something that someone's born with? Or is it developed over time? If it's developed over time, are there signs where, for example, as a parent, you can put a stop to it, or early interventions can help? So I'm very curious to know that, especially the part that if they're born with it, is it genetic or is it acquired?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's actually both. You know, children who have a difficult temperament, because we are all born with a certain temperament. So children who are born with a difficult temperament tend to, we'll see more, more narcissism in them. But other than that, it's also really the parenting. And there's two pathways to that parenting. Remember, narcissism comes from trauma. And I get very worried when I say that, because then everybody's like, oh, then we feel bad for the person. Okay, but let's not, because not everybody who has had a traumatic upbringing will develop into narcissism, right? So, or develop into a narcissist. So there's two pathways. One is if they've had a difficult temperament plus an environment that's very invalidating, that's minimizing. Maybe the parents are, like they just don't care about the child, not there. So that's one pathway where we see people becoming narcissistic. The other pathway is the temperament is still difficult, but the parenting is overindulgent. Giving the child everything, letting them, putting the child on the pedestal. No, you are very special. You are better than everybody else. You are so special that I'm going to do everything so that you get everything in life. So that's the other pathway. So it's really a blend of the two that, we see the evolution of the narcissist. Was that helpful?
Sorry, I'll be quick. Hi, thank you, doctor. So my question will be mainly on, because I've recently got out of a relationship, and I do realize that my partner has some sort of like narcissistic
Your
traits.
ex-partner?
Yes, we just boyfriend, girlfriend. And then the thing is, because of course the relationship just ended not long ago, and I realized that I still have this sense of empathy, and I'm really very concerned about him, because I know that there is a lot of trauma on him that causes him to behave this way. Like, I was just wondering, like, is there any way as a victim of narcissist, how can we, kind of like move forward, and let's say maybe, like, I'm not sure if it's a nice word to say, to just abandon this empathetic part, or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's not abandon the empathetic part, because it makes you the person that you are. I want to say that narcissists are most attracted to empaths. Okay, so that's the perfect combination for them. Because they are going to cry victim, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, no, let me take care of you, right? Because that's the person that you are. But listen, there's nothing wrong with you. So you please continue being the empath that you are. Is there a way to move on? Absolutely. The more you understand this, you're not going to stop caring. And why would you? Because again, that's what makes you, right? But what you're going to do is you're going to move away knowing that this relationship is not good for you. And I would suggest, please, work with a therapist to be able to heal from this relationship that you've just had. Because the more that therapist will help you move towards that place where you can, you're still yourself, but you're not having that desire to go back into that relationship.
I see. So no more attracting the narcissistic. Awesome.
Thank you.
Listen, after this, anybody who's very charming, charismatic, you take a step back and say, okay, what's going on here?
All the way.
Thank you.
Thank
Last
you.
question, please.
Hi, my name is Jay, and I have a single question that is, why do people feel guilty or responsible for someone else's narcissistic behavior?
Why do people feel guilty for someone else's narcissistic behavior? Okay, give me an example.
Like, let's say if somebody's in a relationship and they are, facing some problems with their partner and they are not responsible for it, but their partner always put up blames and
Yeah.
reasons on them. So how do people like get away from this? How do people understand that, okay, this is not their fault, this is somebody else's fault?
Yeah. So again, but that's the narcissist MO, right? It's always going to be, it's your fault,
Definitely.
right? So, and that is what makes a narcissist who they are, because that extreme lack of accountability. I'm never going to, it's never my fault. It's always somebody else's fault. Okay. How do you get away from it?
Yeah.
Shh. What she did. You walk away from that relationship if you can. Otherwise, again, what you do is you find yourself in therapy with a really good therapist who understands the narcissistic relationship dynamic, who's able to help you create those distances and those boundaries where you don't internalize what the person is saying to be your problem. It's a very challenging thing to do. But if you can work with a therapist, the best case scenario is you walking away from that relationship. But if you can't, for whatever reason, then working with a therapist who will help you while you're in the relationship.
I want to ask you one more question now that, most of the people out here in the world, they don't have access to therapists and they have never been to the therapist, right? Like if we talk about in the US, everybody comes across therapists and you get it like after you're 14. And let's say somebody in the Arab world, somebody in Southeast Asia, somebody in India, somebody in Saudi, where they have some sort of family reputation they have to maintain and they cannot go to the therapist. How do we resolve that situation?
So that's why I do things like this. And I have podcasts, we have a lot of resources. When I was growing up, a few years back, we did not have access to that information. Now we do. So I think if you can't, and I understand the cultural, because I used to work over here, so I also know at that point, and the stigma of going to a mental health therapist. But there are enough resources. If you suspect that you're in a relationship that is toxic and whether narcissistic or not, like I said, the label doesn't matter. But if it's a toxic relationship, there are resources out there that can help you, in your journey of healing. So the book talks about the narcissist, obviously the relationship, but it talks about healing. So things like that, right? So if you can listen to it online, if you can buy books, if you can educate yourself enough to feel empowered to move to self. I'm a big fan of IFS, Internal Family Systems, which is a therapeutic model. Again, the founder is Dr. Richard Schwartz, who I've interviewed for the book. But he has an amazing book, and it's called No Bad Parts. I would recommend everybody buy that. That's your healing journey at home if you don't have access to a therapist. So there are resources available. And I would be happy to share my email. With whoever wants to email me questions, I will do my very best to send you all resources, to send you on the way to help.
And let's say somebody has a relationship, they are married, they have kids, like in
Sorry, can I just say we're out of time, but Dr. Rachna is going to be signing her books upstairs, and you can maybe get a minute with her privately
For sure. I'll talk
upstairs.
to her. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Rachna, thank you. This has been an absolutely fascinating conversation, and I know that we could go on and on. It's extremely eye-opening. The book is available for sale at the Magrudy's shop outside, and Dr. Rachna will be doing the book signings upstairs, where you can get a minute to meet her. I want to thank all of you for being here today. I'd like to thank Emirates Airline and Dubai Culture, our founding partners that make this festival possible, Emirates Literature Foundation, the parent organization of the festival, Dubai Duty Free, who is the sponsor for today, our volunteers, our AV team, room managers, everybody, and most importantly, Dr. Rachna. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I just, because, so my mentor, I want to recognize, Dr. Nakra.
She's the one who put me on this path, really. So, and this is what, like 25 years or 20, but she got me, like she lit the fire, and the fire is still going on. So I hope I do you proud.
Thank you.
And if you want to talk to me, you don't have to feel like you have to buy the book. I am upstairs, so come and talk to me anyways.